Hey guys, welcome to tonight's class, Wedlock Warriors, Warrior Wednesday. We're Jeff and Maggie now. We're the founders of Wedlock Warriors, and we are excited to get things kicked off tonight. So if this is your first time, being on board tonight with the class, welcome. Totally cool. Don't think that you've missed anything. Everything's recorded. Go back in our archives, and you can watch the first 3 classes, and definitely browse through that. But tonight we're going to be focusing, or we're going to be starting up week 4 of the focus class, and that is unraveling the truth. And so those of you that are new, that don't really know what that means, it's my Uncle Rich. Hey, that don't know what that means. Focus is an acronym we came up with to give you 5 solid steps to implement change in your marriage, that so you can start having positive actions happen right away. So basically, we looked at our lives, what happened, what went bad, what went right, what went wrong, and put those 5 things together in a little pamphlet or in a little report that you can download for free on our website. And anyways, just go check it out. I don't want to get too much into that. It takes a little bit longer to explain it than it probably needs to. But tonight we're gonna talk about unraveling the truth, and that is one of the most important steps of the 5 steps that we talk about in the free report. And really, it comes down to this: when you're going through a tough time in your marriage, and when things aren't working out, and you don't know what's going to happen next, there's really one thing that's blocking you, or blocking both you, I guess you could say, if you're both working or trying to figure it out. There's one thing blocking your success, and that is your not understanding how to change. Okay, everyone wants change. Everyone wants different results. Everyone wants to have that great marriage or that great friendship or that great relationship, whatever. Everybody wants this stuff, but how do we get there? Well, to get there, we have to understand how we got to where we are in the first place. Okay, so if we want different results, we got to figure out how we got the results that we have presently in our marriage in the first place. And I know Maggie will talk on this a little bit later on, and but I wanted to bring it to your attention because I think a lot of people out there don't understand how much power they really have to change their own circumstances, especially when you start going through the 5 steps one by one, and really start focusing in on knocking them out. And, you fix your eye on God. You get the lines of communication open. You start looking at your association by cleaning your circle and taking a look at who you're hanging out with. And then you start the self-education portion of the 5 steps, and that's unraveling the truth in a broader sense. Why don't you talk about that self-education part, and then come back to me, and I'll tell them the secret that they need to know to have change happen right now.
Okay, sure.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Because they're going to get tired of hearing me. I've been talking for a while. That's like 4 minutes of me talking. You see that?
True.
No one
That's
wants
right.
that.
I was clocking you. Something to think about. A lot of times when we get in a bad situation in our marriage, we just keep hoping it's going to get better.
Right.
You're hoping your way down the wrong path, really, is what's happening. So, if you're on the road,
I'm drinking your tea.
I know you are. I see that. If you're on the road and you're on the wrong road, and you just keep hoping that's going to turn into the right road, you're still going to end up in the wrong location, right?
Right.
It
doesn't matter how fast you hit the gas.
It doesn't matter if you slow down. It doesn't matter if you pull over, unless you're planning to turn it in another direction. So you have to be really careful in your marriage to treat it that way. And I think I don't really know why people do that, but if you were to go back to your high school days, and for some of you it may be longer ago than others. For us, it's been a little while, hasn't it? But
5 years is a long time.
Right. But think about how you studied, how you learned. You had an instructor that told you, this is important, write this down. This is important for the test. You need to know this information. So you had a notebook, or you had a book, or if you studied, you had all of these things that would help you to memorize the important things so you could pass that test correctly, right? But once you leave school, you don't have that instructor in front of you anymore. There's nobody to say, hey, this is important. You better learn this so that your finances are going to be in the right place. You better learn this or else your kids are not going to know how to respect you. You better learn this or your husband is not going to feel respected in the house and it's going to get really rocky. So you don't have that instructor anymore. And if you aren't actively seeking an instructor through a book, through videos, through some venue, then you're going to just start gradually getting education from society. And we dig into that more in the next week.
Yeah, next week we'll talk about that more.
But that's like a subliminal programming that's happening.
Right.
And so you have to be very conscious of that. And I always think about, gosh, if I wanted to learn how to do heart surgery, which I don't, but if I wanted to learn how to do that, I would not go sit in with a bunch of mechanics and hope that I learn how to do heart surgery one day. And each day go, I didn't learn it today. Well, maybe tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, I'm going to go sit with them again. You better get in the right books with the right people and find some people that are doing that so that you know what to do. So I think in your marriage, you better find somebody that has the results you want and just figure out how on earth did they get there, and start looking at resources and be careful there too. I mean, you know as well as I do that some of the resources come from good resources. That sounded really funny, but some of the information comes from good resources and some of it comes from people that kind of want to make a little cash, right?
Well, right. And so the idea, and this kind of goes right into the point I wanted to make. There's a formula or a pattern of change. So you're in a bad situation. You right now, you're coming to watch these videos because you want to change your marriage, change your relationship for the positive. And so you're like, okay, what do I do, right? How do we get this done? Well, good. At least you're seeking good information. That's step one, I guess. Mm-hmm. But how does that happen? Well, you got to think about how you got into the predicament you're in the first place. Mm-hmm. So the results you have right now, whatever it is, be it in your marriage, be it the relationship with your kids, be it the relationship with your family, extended family members, your work, whatever. But specifically, let's focus in on marriage here. The results you have in your marriage right now, that result directly comes from the actions you've taken on any particular situation inside the marriage. Excuse me. Those actions that you take directly come from the thinking you possess in your mind about any of the subject matter that's going on inside your marriage at any given time. But the most important link in that chain is what comes before the thinking, and that's the information that you have stored between your ears about the subject of marriage and interpersonal relationships and how husbands and wives are supposed to work things out, to pull from. So perfect example is if you've never explored marriage books or different techniques of what's out there and you've never even looked in that direction, the only thing you have to pull from as far as marriage recovery and healing your marriage is from what you've learned from your parents or whoever raised you or the person that, the people that influenced you the most that were married in your life that you're around. That's all you got to pull from. Well, if your parents had a dynamite, awesome marriage, great. At least you got a good example. You've got a good example of what a good marriage looks like. Now, how it works, that's a whole different story, But if you had a bad marriage, if your parents had a bad marriage, you don't even...
Where do you start?
Where do you start? You don't even know. And here, I'll give you a perfect example. You don't even know that your parents had a bad marriage.
Right.
I bet you don't even know that your parents did, especially if they're still together. Now, if they got divorced or whatever, you could probably say, well, they probably didn't have a really good marriage or whatever the cliches out there about divorce are. I'm sure you can justify that in your head. But if they're still together or they were together and maybe got divorced later on in your adult life, like in my case, you wouldn't even think to know. You probably don't even know that they had a bad marriage. You just thought that that's that's how normal things work. Like, for instance, here's a really cool thing. When me and Maggie first got married, and this is kind of a personal story I'll just share with you. The information I had in my head about when there was a disagreement between me and her, about anything, really, it didn't matter. Then, and if there was an argument that was going to happen, my volume level would increase exponentially until either I won the fight or she cried or whatever.
Mhm.
And that was just normal for me. I just figured that's the way people got things done, you know, especially in a marriage, because that's the only example I had. When my parents had an argument or had a disagreement, it was an elevation of volume in the house until it was over. And, you know, I never thought anything of it. And for me, that was normal. For me, it was like no big deal. You know, we yell at each other, call each other a couple names, and then the next thing you know, everything's fine. And I would be, after that, I'd be fine. It didn't. She would be in like tatters for weeks.
Because that was not my normal. That was not my normal. I had never seen that modeled for me.
Right.
So it felt like, oh my gosh, we're falling apart every time something small would happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the big deal, you know, and that's what I'm trying to illustrate. You know, I'm not saying that yelling's right or, you know, whatever. It wasn't right, you know, but my right at that time was what I had left in my head.
We were missing that communication piece. We didn't know how to communicate effectively.
No, we had no clue. But what I'm saying though is if you're not, so the results we had in that particular situation, we had an argument. The result was her crying and me yelling, right? Mm-hmm. So if we don't want that result, where did that result come from? That result came from the actions of, well, me yelling and her crying, right? Okay. But where did that action come from? That came from the thinking I had on the subject at that time. How do we handle disagreements in a marriage? And then where did that thinking come from? That thinking came from the information I was digesting in my head. See, when something happens in your life and you have to make a decision about anything, when you're making a decision, whether it be with what to do in a marriage situation or how to raise your kids or what church you're going to go to, all this stuff, right? You have to pull from your file system inside your brain. And if your file system's full of malarkey, you're going to get really bad results. And so the only way to affect change, and this is going to be the number one roadblock for you guys, you're going to resist this, you don't believe it, whatever, no one teaches this, but the only thing that's blocking you from getting what you want out of your marriage, getting what you want out of really any situation in your life, is the information you possess in your head on any given subject. So the number one blocker to positive change is the information that you have on that subject. If you get good information, you're going to get good results. Mm-hmm. If you get bad information, you're going to get bad results every time. It's just like a computer. So we have to get good information in our heads about the subject of marriage and how husbands and wives work together and how that all looks and what's real and what's bad. We have to really start looking at that and start pumping in the good information, especially if you're having a real hard time right now, presently. Right. If you're having a right now time presently, things aren't looking good. That's when we really got to step back and say, hey, what's going on here? How do we stop this from going in that direction? What can we do to make it go back the other way or go in a different direction? And the only way to do that is to start importing new information into our systems. And so this is explained more in the report in more in depth. So if you haven't got the report yet, I would encourage you to go to our website and download the free report. It's going to cost you an email address, and we don't spam, we don't bug you or anything like that. It's really just to keep in contact with you with any updates that we have as far as our blog's concerned. And everything's free, so I don't know. We don't sell anything. So anyways, you got to add?
Well, just one other thing just to think about. If you've never done this before, if you've never started to educate yourself on having a better marriage, it does take time. It took you time to get where you're at. There's a book called The Slight Edge that talks about how,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Right, how you have in your mind the direction you think you're going, but over time you take slight steps off the path, and pretty soon you end up way over here. So if
let me tell the story that comes with that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, over time it gets you way off track. So when you figure out, oh gosh, I screwed up, you've got to, over time, get yourself back on. But the key is over time. And so maybe you're saying, boy, that sounds great, but I don't know that I can read a book. I don't know that I can do all this stuff. So you have to just say, okay, for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes, I'm going to try to start digging into this, and just start to do little steps to get yourself back on track.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got something awesome.
I'm just getting excited. Well, here's the thing. We're going to have people on the other end of this line. You guys that are watching out there, some of you right now are having this conversation in your head. You're like, Jeff, I don't read. Maggie, I'm not reading. It ain't going to happen. I haven't read a book since college or since high school. I'm not a reader. Well, here's what I got to say to that. If you don't read, you don't fix. If you don't read, you're not going to fix your situation. Bottom line. I don't know how to tell you. God's book, the Bible, was written for a reason. Reading affects your brain in a different way than either listening or getting taught by someone, visually. Reading, you can look at the studies of how it affects your brain or whatever. I'm not going to go there, but if you don't read, you don't fix. And so you've got to get rid of that childish notion. And I'm just going to say it's childish notion that you're not going to read, or you shouldn't read, or you don't read, or you don't want to read. Okay, I get it. When I first started this journey, I wasn't a huge reader either. And I'm not saying I am now. I mean, I do read, probably 2 or 3 books a month. That's a pretty big deal for me. Now Maggie, she might read 7 or 8. But that's her, but I'm just saying, if you're hungry to change, you're going to have to read. You're going to have to read. You got to figure out some things. And and here's the thing. There is a quote that I'm going to share with you. It's called by a guy named Erasmus. He was, as far as I know, a Greek philosopher. Anyways, it's attributed to him that said this, although I've seen other people that said similar things. And he says this. He says, experience is the teacher of fools. And what does he mean by that? Well, does he mean that you shouldn't learn from your experience? No, you should learn from your experience. But if it's a really bad experience, wouldn't it be nice if we could learn from somebody else's experience first before going down that road? The Bible says the person that keeps the company of fools is going to end up being a fool himself. And we don't want to go down that path. If we can get the information from a source that's already walked down the path a little bit further than we have, made those mistakes, why don't we avoid them? Why don't we just take their advice? And Jeff Olson, the book Slight Edge, really goes over that well. Mm-hmm. And so there's a recommendation for you right there. Go get that book, The Slight Edge, crank through it as fast as possible. It's a really good read, actually. Mm-hmm. But the point we're trying to make is those little deviations you make off the path of righteousness or the correct path for you in your marriage can really, really end you up in a really bad spot. And to illustrate this point, one of the things that we ran into, what was a couple years ago, right? It was 2 years ago with a guy?
No, I don't even know. It's maybe about a year ago.
Yeah. So anyways, we live in this part of town where we got a big house that looks kind of similar to a lot of houses, but it's a big, tall, we live in, I don't know what you call like a downtown area of a very small Midwestern town. But the thing is, we live in between like the bar district and like the church district over there. Whatever. Anyway,
small town America.
It's small town America, and people walk up and down the street all the time. And lo and behold, okay, so I get up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and I come down. It's a Saturday, and I'm going to work, and I come down the steps, and I look over at the couch, and I'm like, there's somebody's feet poking out on the couch. I'm like, okay. And her brother was out of town or something, and I thought, well, maybe it's Bob. And so I go up and I was like, hey, is Bob here? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay. And I go down, and I'm still rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, we
also have a teenager.
Yeah, I have a teenager, so I'm like, okay. But I haven't even had my coffee yet. I'm just barely awake. I'm making my way down the step. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go look and see who this is. And I get closer, and I'm like, is that Gabe? No, that's my son, Gabriel. Mm-hmm. And I get closer, what? And I get close, and I'm like, it's just some dude on my couch. There's just some dude on my couch. And he was a younger guy, and I was like, oh, what the heck is this? And I told Maggie, I was like, hey, call police. There's some dude on our couch. We didn't
know how he was going to wake up. We didn't know what to do.
There's some dude on our couch. I'm like, what am I going to do with this guy? So the point being is, that guy didn't wake up in the morning and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out. I'm going to get really, really drunk. And then I'm going to go sleep on a stranger's couch just in the middle of the night. Thank God I wasn't up. Thank God she was sleep. She didn't decide to fall asleep on the couch or something, reading a book.
I almost did.
That could have been a really, really tough situation for him and me. And it might have ended up a really, really bad situation. It turns out, they came and got him, took him to jail or whatever. And whatever, there's a ton of different things we could talk about when it comes to that. But he didn't wake up saying, I'm going to do that. But all those slight steps that he took led him to sleeping on that couch. All those actions.
Those little actions throughout the day.
Started with 1 beer, then it went to 17. Yeah, whatever.
It led him to our couch. Yeah, and then it led him to being handcuffed and
prosecuted.
And escorted out.
Right.
So,
but here's the deal, guys. That situation could have ended up with him being killed too. And last thing I want in the world is something like that to happen. But hey, some stranger breaking in your house. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, guys, I hope you understand where we're coming from. Hope you're seeing the bigger picture here with Wedlock Warriors. Our whole mission is to help you guys
learn from our example. He was just saying that experience is the teacher of fools. Let our experience be the teacher for you.
Yeah.
That way we're putting it all out there for you, so you can learn from the things that we did wrong.
Right.
So that you don't have to go down that same path. You can say, wow, I'm not going to go where they went.
Right.
Because we can help you bypass that and get to the same results that we have.
Right. And so, guys, with that being said, feel free to reach out to us. Hit us up on the messenger, email, smoke signal, whatever you need if you're wanting personal.
We don't read that very well.
No. If you're wanting some personal one-on-one help or you have some specific questions that need answered, feel free to do that. In the meantime, get the report. Download the free report. It's located on the website. That'll go into greater detail, and stay tuned to this channel or this Wedlock Warriors Facebook page where all of our information is posted, where you can find all of the latest information and these little classes that we put on every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., which we might be moving back to 8:30. I don't know.
Not yet.
Not yet.
A couple weeks.
Yeah, we're going to wake up. Anyways, we love you guys. We are Jeff and Maggie now. We're Wedlock Warriors. Real life.
Real questions.
Real answers. Have a great night.